Well, good morning, folks, and welcome to another program of the Veterans Forum. Today is the 22nd of December, 2011. And unlike most of the shows that we've done, this is kind of a special one. We're taking a little bit of a remote, if you will, off studio shot. A friend of ours here, Frank Watson, is going to share his histories with us. For those of you who do not know, the program is part of a Library of Congress Veterans History Project, wherein they have asked, and we've been doing it for the last 6 years here, veterans, male and female, in any of the wars, if they have served and would like to share that history with us. Every one of you is invited. The bottom line, if you don't tell your story, nobody else will. So much for that. Okay, Frank? It's your show, if you will. Introduce yourself, your name, branch of service, dates of service, and whatever you feel gives you a good history, and then we'll start getting nosy.
I'm Frank Watson, and I flew in World War II and in the Pacific Theater completely, no European theater. And I flew 38 combat missions, 32 of which were from Angar in the Palau Islands, about 400 miles east of the Philippines, and then the last 6 were out of Okinawa into China and Japan.
Okay, now, do you have your official APO, if you will, Air Force address? Why I say that, so that there may be some guys out there who would serve in the same outfit, maybe they can get together with you. Was the 49th Bomb Group or the what Air Force and so on?
Was the 494th Bomb Group, the 864th Squadron, and the APO was 26, I believe. 24 or 26.
Okay, yeah. Numbers don't make any difference, folks. After 60 years, we're doing good to be here sometimes. But what we're trying to do, as with all the other shows, this is Frank's time to tell you and to share with you and with us what he did and how, in the company of some other guys, they did what they were supposed to do. I'd like to go back, though, and find out where he came from and what he did so that we can identify him. To that point, if you would, tell us, like where and when were you born, and how was life growing up back in those days, what we call the old days? Anything special, anything that you remember that you'd like to share?
I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and because of the Depression, we went all over the East Coast, so I don't have any particular spot that I remember fondly.
No, none of us did, but go ahead.
We were in St. Louis and out of there and into Detroit, Michigan, and then back down into St. Louis, and then out to Dallas, Texas, and then to Atlanta, Georgia. And then when the war broke out, I went to work for the Navy in Portsmouth, Virginia, as an apprentice, and I stayed there for about 9 months, and then I enlisted in the Army Air Corps, and that was on October the 13th, 1943, and I was not called to active duty until February of 44. And so we went, I went from inactive to active duty to, to Florida, Miami Beach, for basic training. And from there, we went to classification center. No, I went from there to Lynchburg, Virginia, and stayed there 2 months and got my first taste of actually flying an airplane there. It was a Piper Cub. Wonderful, wonderful.
With a propeller out front, the old-fashioned kind.
And so after that, then we went to Classification Center in Nashville, Tennessee. And from there, I went to Monroe, Louisiana, to navigation school, and went through preliminary and then advanced navigation school, and graduated on February the 5th, 1944. And from there, then I was sent to, Arizona, Davis-Monthan
Oh,
Field in Arizona. And I joined my crew there. And we were immediately crew number 4, and there were 10 of us. Pilot was Joe Logan, captain, and co-pilot was Chester Price, and bombardier was Don Whitney, and I was the navigator. And then we had 6 enlisted men who flew with us in a B-24, and it was crowded.
yeah. Can you go back a little bit though, if you would? You spent quite some time, a lot of the guys have fond memories, if you want to call it that, of when they went from civilian to into the service, as far as going through boot camp and some of the good and the bad things that may or may not have happened to you that you can remember, like to share with us. You know, first day in, how did you feel? Happy, scared, confused?
Well, confused mostly, because they had us, we arrived there late one afternoon and immediately went and had haircuts.
Still getting over it, huh?
Right. And so from there, then we were in Miami Beach, Florida, and we stayed there, I think, for 2 months.
What was your duty there?
Drilling,
No, hoofing?
yes, walking, and exercising, and
Girl watching?
no,
No.
none of that. But we had a pretty good time there in Miami Beach, and then from Miami Beach went. Where did I say we went?
Tucson?
No.
Okay.
Lynchburg, Virginia, and from Lynchburg, then to Nashville, Tennessee, for classification, and that's where I got classified as a navigator.
And when were you commissioned? Where along the line did you get commissioned?
After that, February the 5th, 1944,
Okay. The butter bar, huh?
got my wings.
Yeah. How was that now, in practice, how many flights did you have to make to qualify to be an air crewman? And one of the fellows used to say that the biggest problem he had was using a good airplane to get way up high and to jump out of it, practice. Now, how many times did you have to practice shooting? Or didn't you?
Never,
Never?
never.
Just had a good pilot, praise to the Lord, you're gonna get down all right.
Wasn't so much a good pilot, it was just training. And so we were in navigation school, and finally, as I said, graduated on February the 5th
Mhm.
of 44. And from there, then to Tucson, and then joined our crew I joined our crew there, and then we went to about 3 or 4 different places, one of which was Wendover, Utah, and they threw us out of there so that the B-29s could come in and practice.
That's great.
And after that, then we, I'm sure, after that we went to several other places, and finally then got our plane in, our new plane in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Nebraska, yeah.
And then flew from there to just north of San Francisco and stayed, I think, 2 days there, and then flew over water to the Hawaiian Islands,
Okay, Hickam.
Hickam.
Yeah.
And it was my first ever long water flight, 14 and a half hours. And I was scared absolutely to death.
Nobody else.
And I remember I made one correction, and we came in dead on.
Good.
And so we landed there in Hickam. We stayed there 2 or 3 days, and then went to the small island of the Hawaiian group.
I can't tell you because we didn't fly
Yeah.
here. Anyway,
Anyhow, we went there, and we stayed there 3 months. which
just
is not-
practicing.
Practicing and also waiting for our island to be opened up, Angar. So we had to fly down then in various places to get to Angar.
Mm-hmm.
We got there in August and flew our first mission the next day. And then in and out of that, we flew 32 missions out of Angar,
Where were they directed towards? China?
Philippines.
Philippines?
all in the Philippines, various places, Manila, anyhow, all of the islands in the Philippines. And we had one of our first missions was, I'll never forget it, Christmas Day of 1944. And we got in and we were bombing Manila, and the Japanese didn't like that, so they sent like 20 different planes after us. And
Sure you were, yeah.
and we, my top turret gunner shot one down, and my nose turret gunner thought he had one, but he didn't get credit for it. So we had one confirmed kill, and then we went back to Angar, and then we really didn't get terrible things. We suffered through flak and a few fighters, but not many, but mostly flak. And our waist gunner, Max Burton, was hit, was a piece of flak, and I was up front, and the bomb bays were open, and I ran back through the open bomb bays to get to him with the medicine kit. I was the officer to do that. And so I couldn't get him to turn loose of the gun. He, he, he was mad at him. So
You're gonna get to a guy.
finally, I gave him morphine. And I had to give it to him in his leg because I couldn't get his sleeve up.
Oh,
And so then he passed out and turned loose of the gun. Then we went back and we landed in, where did we land? Anyhow,
and you came down, that's the important.
well, we landed there and gassed up and then went back to our home. And all in all, probably 14 flying hours.
It's a long haul.
It's a long time for a navigator, let me tell you.
Now, were you a low-level bomber, high-altitude bombing? Did you have any ranges that you had to fly at?
We were normally between 10 and 12,000 feet up.
So it was a range of almost any ACAC then?
Oh yeah, it was ACAC. Oh yeah. That's how Max got hit, was flak.
Did you have any strafing runs as you're coming in and out of
No,
targets?
no, we stayed up.
Okay. Now, I've interviewed some of the other guys, and they say that in a formation, if they weren't not the lead ship, the nose gunner was usually the guy that salvaged your bombs, because when the first bomb of the first ship came down, that was the automatic release. It's the same procedure with you guys. It was a standard operation procedure.
Well, we had a bombardier, full time, so he would
You
drop
do all the
them
work, okay.
when he was supposed to. And Don Whitney was his name. And we had, I'm trying to think. We had a place in the Philippines where we would land after going up into the Philippines up here. Then we would come back and land and gas up
Okay,
and
you
then
go
go
home.
back home.
Now, were you ever the lead navigator?
I was lead navigator for about 12 different missions. One of which was a mission that I was real proud of because we were bombing Corregidor, and they had gathered together all of the planes in the area that they could, and
They used to, the Japanese or the Americans? Who was the they? You said they gathered the planes.
what do you mean?
Well, you said up there, they had gathered all the planes. Who was the they? You people or the Japanese?
Oh, us.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we were going in to bomb Corregidor, and I was lead navigator for the wing, and I had a 5-minute time when my squadron and group could be in there.
You know, with the target.
Otherwise, there were people coming over the top of us
They nailed you.
or underneath.
Yeah.
And
That's
So-
scary.
yeah,
That was friendly, unfriendly fire.
I worked my fanny off.
But that's the name of the game.
But we got that done, and I was lead navigator for a total of 12 missions.
Good.
And see, when we left Angar, we flew individually. We didn't fly in formation.
Okay, then rendezvous later on.
In the Philippines, right on the edge of the Philippines, we would rendezvous and then form up. Then the pilots would know how far we were away from the target, So they would loose form until we were like a half hour away, then they would get in tight.
Now, how tight was tight, wingtip to wingtip, or you
Yes.
had good cover over and above, so that nobody could get at you?
Actually, a wing here and a wing over here.
Mhm.
So you weren't just bumping, you were on top of each other. And that way, if there were any Japanese fighters, they couldn't get into you.
Good.
And that was the one thing that happened to us I mentioned earlier about Christmas Day. And one thing I didn't mention was the Japanese bombers were up above us, and they dropped phosphorus bombs
Burn you out if they hit you.
and tried to hit us
Mhm.
with the stuff from the phosphorus. Luckily, we didn't.
Good. Now, before we leave there, do you have any memories, if you will, of when you were in Angar, as far as living conditions and what you did when you weren't assigned to a patrol or a
Yeah,
fight?
we lived in tents.
Okay, and what was that like?
That was tent living. You stayed in your area, and then there were places to eat, and that was it. There was no
No
fun and
Quonset
games.
huts or,
No fun and games.
oh, strange.
We had
Spartan living, huh?
we had I remember one particular mission that we got shut down, and like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and so we all went over to the officers club and started playing poker, and we kept playing poker all day. There were 7 of us. Finally, one of the guys got up and said he had had enough. Then this fella that none of us knew was standing right there, and he said, do you mind if I join you? And sure, come on.
Yeah, bring you money.
So when he sat down, he said, that was your first mistake. And he
cleaned your clock, huh?
then he proceeded to show us why he was sent out by special services, to show us why we shouldn't gamble with anybody
Oh,
if we didn't know him. And so he dealt several top hands, and each one then would come around to him and he would win. And no money, just betting. And finally, then he explained to us why he was there, and so on. Then he said, well, now I'll show you one other thing, and then I want to stop for the evening. He said, I'm going to deal these cards, and I want you to tell me what card I dealt. So he did it out, and somebody said, 3rd card. He said, no, 4th card. And he went on, dealt it again. What card was that? 2nd card? No, bottom card.
he played ping pong with you.
Oh yeah, and then he stayed with us, but that was what he was teaching us, that you really have no
Don't be
idea
polite, yeah.
what a guy is doing. And so then when it was all over, he said, I love to play poker. Will you let me play in your game if I don't deal?
Yeah. Well, he was honest.
Yeah.
He was honest. He probably saved an awful lot of heartache too. No matter what kind of money you use, when it goes, huh?
But but he was good, and we enjoyed him.
That's great. Okay, now let's move on up where you were, the last 6 flights to
Okinawa.
Okinawa.
Yeah.
What was your transition like? Did the whole group go? Did you go 1 or 2 at a time? And where did you land in Okinawa?
One or two at a time. We didn't fly in formation. We flew up individually and landed at Kadena, I think it was. The
That's over
airstrip.
by Naha, on the west side of the island?
Yes.
Okay.
And so then we got back together there, and then after we got there, then the next day or two we were flying missions.
Okay. And you said, I think it was 6 missions you flew out of Okinawa.
Right.
Now, where were they located, or what were your targets? Korea, you
Japan and China.
Oh,
Shanghai, for one.
that's good. No. Now, where were you when the bomb was dropped? The bomb.
We were on Okinawa and didn't believe it.
Okay. Why didn't you?
For one thing, I got to go back. One of the last missions, if not the last one, as the navigator, they told me, do not use target of opportunity of either one of the 2 places.
Okay.
We
Something was in the wind.
We want to see what happens to them.
So you had kind of an advance warning of what was coming up.
And so we didn't even come close to there. Even if, like normally, see, we had no radar. So we were looking and spotting dead reckoning. And they would let us go. If the one target was socked in, then we could go to a second or a third.
Yeah, those are your targets of opportunity.
But absolutely do not do Nagasaki.
or Hiroshima.
Right.
So, that's good. That's the first time I've heard that, and I've had a lot of guys. There's one who unfortunately died a couple of months ago, had a flyover after the day after they bombed Nagasaki, and his face, he said, just as we're coming over the horizon, we looked down, and all you could see was some cement. Everything else was gone.
Yeah.
His face, he said, that's the only time that I ever came close to recognizing what we had been doing.
Yeah, we didn't do that.
Yeah, boy. Well, that's good. I'd like to take a few minutes, and you as a navigator, if you will. This is inscribed here. You read it. This is your baby. Tell the people what and how you worked. This is a navigator special. A computer by name, if you will.
U.S. Army Air Forces computer aerial dead reckoning. And you could see that, and then you can see the thing on the back, and all it was a computer. I mean just
A graph thing all set up, huh?
yeah. So what we did, we would use this right here to plot our wind and where we were going. You can see the circle there and the X's.
And then what was this guy used for?
That was just to plot it on the
On the grid?
grid.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And that was it? That and the stopwatch? Did you have an Ingersoll or a wristwatch or something?
I had a wristwatch that was called a hack watch, and it was a watch that when we would get ready to go out on a mission, they would give us a hack of the exact time.
Okay,
And we
synchronize it.
punch
And
it.
everybody in the flight was on that time, no matter
Right.
who or what.
Right.
Yeah, good.
So that's what we had. And there was one, that was the main thing, but then there was another clock, if you will, that I used in case something happened to this.
No? Backup for backup, huh?
Yeah,
And now, where do you get your direction? You know, fly 10 degrees north, 10 degrees west, or whatever. Is that all included in the way this thing was working?
yeah, yeah. It,
That's
We
a
would-
complicated thing.
we would be going like on these maps,
Okay, I will hold that up later.
and you'd be going, let's say, from Angar to the Philippines, we'd be going 270 degrees.
All right,
And so you'd plot that on here, and then,
triangle off it.
yeah.
Okay. Amazing.
And of course, back then, we had no radar. We couldn't use radio because the Japanese could use it. So all that we had was visual, which is dead reckoning, and then I learned right away how to read the wind off of the waves so that I'd know which way the wind was blowing.
Tell us about that, because I've been told a lot of times that saved a lot of guys knowing where the waves were, the wind and the wind direction. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, I used the drift meter, and I would get it lined up, and then I would look down the drift meter, and then I would look at the waves, and I would estimate the wind speed, or how big the waves were.
Okay, between waves and how high they were, the white caps and everything
Right,
else.
right. And
That was dead, dead reckoning by God. But
that
you got there, that's the amazing part. Out and back with no strain of pain.
yeah, and the interesting, one of the interesting things was flying from San Francisco to Hickam. I didn't know any of this crap, and
Technical term.
so I ended up estimating.
Okay.
And one of the things that I found, and this is an old navigator's trick, when we were flying and the sun was going over like that, I would take my sextant and I would shoot the sun before, during the peak, and after, and plot it
And get your position.
so that I'd know where I was.
Yeah. Hey, it saved you bacon and you got there.
And, and in fact, that was what told me where I was when we were going to Hickam. And as I said, I made one correction.
You guessed wrong the first time.
No, it was, the wind was blowing
Oh,
the
it
wrong
shifted
way.
on you. Oh, God.
Anyhow,
Now, what were the conditions, if you will, as we were both on Oki and August came out, did you have any, other than your no-fly, no-bomb, of those two sites, did you have any other premonition or any feeling is that this is it, and next thing we do, we're going for Japan, because that was a staging area in Oki?
no, we were not told that far in advance. We were given the mission for the day, and that's what we did.
Okay, nothing more, nothing less.
No,
Now, do you have any fighter escorts with you on the way in or the way out? It's like they had in Europe, you know, you had to.
we had some on the Christmas Day mission. We had P-38s escorting us, and they killed a bunch of Japanese people. And after that, the Japanese didn't have many planes, so we didn't get much,
Opposition as well?
not much problem. We would just go where we were supposed to go.
Yeah, hey, it pays off. Now this is all history. I'd like to, I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but, you've got to show these things and explain them. I'll hold it up. And the best I can. This is got a title down here, Luzon and Taiwan, so it's probably when you're working. Can you just, a little quick story as to what they are and how they helped you and what you had to do with them?
Well, they are maps that we were given in case we were shot down. And what we would do is try to plot where we were when we got hit,
Mm-hmm.
and then where we were when we landed, and then we know what to do.
Okay, now, were any of you guys, for example, shot down and picked up by submarines or DEs
Yes.
along the way?
Yes,
'Cause that
we
was
had-
the way we had to do it, yeah.
We had one crew, good friends of mine, they were flying our wing, and they got hit. And two engines went out on the same side,
A little lopsided.
and so the plane was on fire. The pilot stayed with it, and this is at 12,000 feet. He stayed with it until his whole crew got out. Then he tried to get out. And with the two engines on one side, the B-24 was not meant to do slow rolls or loops. It did 2 slow rolls and a loop, and the wings didn't come off. And he finally got out at
Wow,
about 2,000 feet.
it's low level.
Yeah.
Okay, now here, this adds to the story now. Part of what they showed here, now these, every guy had one of these in his packet.
Yes.
Okay, tell us what that is, I know, but let
Well,
the people know.
it's an American flag, obviously,
Mm-hmm,
which says that we are Americans, and then there's different wording there for different languages, in case you got in different places.
okay. And this was, if you will, a universal passport home. If you were found and the people were friendly, you'd get there.
Yeah,
Now, this was primarily where, just from going in over Japan?
I can't answer that.
Oh, okay, let me try
I
it.
mean, it's not secret, I just don't
Oh,
remember.
all right, then this is the one, then this would be more, that'd be China, that's the Chinese
That's
flag.
China,
That-
yes.
Now, you issued one for each day you had a different flag, or this was permanent in your pack?
That was into the pack,
Okay,
and depending on where you were going.
all right. Good. Wow. What I would like to do now, is we talked about the maps, I'm gonna hold this guy up, and you kind of walk us through what would be a normal procedure, if that's a good word to use. The where and the how. Have I got upside down right? Yes, okay.
No, you're okay.
I know that.
This is Lady Gulf, and you can see, you can't see, but right here are lines where I plotted where we were at various times of the flights. Not just one flight, but more than one. And so we would go from there to wherever we were going, Lady or wherever, Mindanao, whatever.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, thanks. There's a lot of paperwork, huh? Oh, goodness. Now, we mentioned, I've previewed some of this, but just to give you a sampling of some of the challenge, this is your, you pronounce it Angular or
Angar.
Angar, okay. Give us a little briefing of how important this thing was, and more important, how short it was.
Well, you can look at this and you'll see that this is 6,500-foot runway, and you'll see all of the planes parked down the side. So that, that's where we that's where we were.
Mm-hmm.
And then depends on who was assigned what.
Okay, they're all 24s, or do you have a mixed bag?
All B-24s.
Okay. How many guys didn't quite make the 6,500 feet and ended up in the pond? Or shouldn't I ask that question?
Well, I remember one, and I remember we almost did.
Oh. Close but no cigar, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
What happened with us was we had a pilot who had never made a overloaded night takeoff before. And by overloaded, a B-24 normally overload at 64,000 pounds. Our planes, because of the gas and the distance, took off at 90,000. And we were riding with him, and we go down the runway, and he tries to pull the plane off too early. So it goes up and then goes back down, and then over to one side. Goes a little farther, same thing, up, back down, still. And by this time,
You're running out of runway.
we're to the left of the runway. And then when this happened, then by now he's got it all the way up to the wall, and as we get up in the air, he jacks the gear out from underneath it.
Ooh.
And we fell off the end of the island, and we stayed with water from our propellers for the next mile.
Mm. In a low climb rate, like 0.
Yeah, and finally, he was able to rescue the plane. Our crew chief didn't believe it. He thought we had crashed.
Oh. Well, the fine line, there's not much if, but you hit it, so obviously you didn't crash.
Right. We made it.
Oh, yeah. Now, again, we have a complete dossier of all kinds of wonderful stuff. And I'd like to take some time and let Frank walk through a couple of photographs, if you can or will, as to some of the crew members. They're small, but unlike a lot of us, these guys had cameras, so they can take pictures of the crews and the groups. I'm just gonna open up one. You said you had a couple. Which is the better way to there's your ship right there, isn't it?
That's our ship.
Okay,
And then this is
that's your crew.
4 of my enlisted men,
Okay.
and
Can't really see it.
flip it over.
Well, I'm gonna turn it, he's gonna line it up for me, but I'll hold my finger here and then we'll get back to it.
And here's the other 2 of the enlisted men. Then here's our ground crew chief, and there's his helper.
Okay, so you people can see what we're talking about. There's one of many, right here. That's the crew. Can you see that, Bill?
Mm-hmm.
Is it clear enough?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Notice, who was the oldest guy there? What, some guy 25 or 26 years of age?
No, I was 22,
Oh, and you were the senior?
except for the captain.
And you
I don't know how old he was.
must have been 24 or something.
Yeah. He had been in the infantry
Oh,
and
didn't like walking.
had transferred into the Air Force.
Okay,
The
now this
Army,
is
Army Air Corps.
Army Air Corps, yeah.
Yeah.
That distinguished, a lot of guys don't know the difference. Now, can you see that? This is part of the 4 crewmen, all enlisted. Can you, I'll hold it. Okay? And so that everybody gets a fair shake. There are the other guys back in here.
And this is Max Burton, who is still alive and was the one guy who got a Purple Heart.
Now, how often, talking about that, let's change gears just for a minute. We're going back some 60+ years. Did you guys, like most of us, had some kind of a reunion every 10 years, every 5 years? How many did you get to, and
Oh, I've been
how many are
to,
left?
I didn't get in on the original ones, but my friend, who was the nose turret gunner, Dick Hartwig, finally got notice into one of the magazines, and I responded, and that got me into the circuit with them. I've been to probably 6 or 8 reunions, at least.
Uh-huh. Now, how often, every 2 or 3 years, every 5 years?
To begin with, they were every 5 years. Now they're coming along every year.
Oh. How many, not being macabre, but how many of you guys are left, other than you?
2 others other than me.
Okay. That's a long history, isn't it, buddy?
Yeah, the Joe Jarzinka, who was the flight engineer, and Max Burton, who was the waist gunner that got hit. Those are the only 2 that are left,
Okay. And you?
and me.
Okay. Now, when the war was all over and you got home, did you take advantage of the GI Bill, for example, and go back to
Absolutely,
school?
absolutely. Went to Emory University as an electrical engineer.
Graduated the same way, huh?
Yeah.
Good. Now, what was it like when you got home, compared to what we know about it, some of the guys from Korea and Nam and the other places? Did you feel like you were welcomed home, or, hey, the war's all over, go back to work, go to school?
Just go to work, go to school.
Okay. No strain, no pain.
No,
Okay. Now, I know you had some kids and you had a wife. Where and when did you get married?
1951. 5151.
5151.
Yeah. And we have, Martha is still, she and I are still together, and we have 3 children. The oldest boy, Bill, and second son is Dick, and then the 3rd child is Judy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know Bill.
Yeah.
To tie in there, folks, and this, I'm interrupting a bit, but it's something that Frank and I have shared as a surprise. When Bill, his son, now my son-in-law, back at the camera as a matter of fact, were getting married, we had not been real drinking buddies, but we sat in the back porch one afternoon after the day before the wedding dinner, and I was showing him some of my photographs of Okinawa. And we were flipping the pages, and I came across one of the 24, and he said, "Where'd you get that? What is it?" I swapped it. Being a CB, we didn't have a camera, but we had ways of borrowing things. I said, "I swapped it for such and such." And he looked at it, he said, "If I remember right, that was your squadron insignia on the tail."
It was our squadron, but not our plane.
Okay, so it's a small world, and it's getting smaller, but the families are getting bigger. So we've had a good history. So much for that. Now what I'd like to, this to me is the better part. I'm not stealing any thunder from this guy, but these are some of the records of citations. I'll just read a couple of lines because they go on, and then I'm going to show them later. It says, the awarding of the Air Medal, 2nd Bronze Leaf Cluster, 3rd Bronze Leaf Oak Cluster, 6th, 7th, and 8th to the Air Medal. Every 5 missions, you got a cluster. So if you do the mathematics, 9 times 5 is a lot of flying hours, and they're all here. In addition to that, we have specific citations to the crew as such, the Air Medal, Distinguished Flying Cross. I could talk about him. He earned them. Walk us through this, if you will, buddy.
Right over here is the DFC, the Distinguished Flying Cross. And this is the Air Medal with 5 clusters. And then
Is it?
I think this is good conduct. And this
Oh,
is
you
the
did the card?
Pacific Theater
Uh-huh.
with all of the different battles that we were in. And then this is the Victory Medal. Then these are my 2 dog tags. This is the 7th Air Force that we were in. This is my wings that I got. And then this is a patch that I had on my jacket when we flew into Japan.
Yeah, pretty good, huh? That's a lot of history. One thing I've always been instructed to, if you will, ask you guys, taking care of what you've done here and all your history, was your service experience positive or negative with respect to how it's impacted on your life?
Very positive.
In what
Right.
manner?
I enjoyed being in the service. I enjoyed flying, and I still do. I love to fly. And I wanted to be a pilot, but I didn't qualify for that, so I qualified for navigator.
Have any of the, if you will, things that you learned to do from boot camp on up, as far as working as a team member rather than as an individual, has that manifested itself in how you got through your life when GI Bill and your work experiences?
I guess I can't answer that.
Okay?
I went to work after I graduated from Emory. I went to work for General Electric, and I worked for them for 33 years.
Oh, couldn't keep a steady job, huh?
I did.
Yeah. Now, I know your history, but where in the GE complex have you been? Because a lot of it is from here to there and other places.
Went first to Schenectady, then to Pittsfield, and after Pittsfield, a couple other little places. Oh, and then we went to Wilmington, and then we
San
went
Jose.
back to Pittsfield,
Mm-hmm.
and then back to Schenectady, and I retired from Schenectady.
And that brought you ultimately back here to Hendersonville?
Yes, because we had been here, I worked here for 7 years.
With GE?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you made the loop, huh? One of
Yeah.
Cordner's kids?
Right.
Yeah, that was a while ago. All I can say, press the flesh, buddy, and thank you for your service and your time.
Thank you.
Folks,
Appreciate it.
this is just one more, what we're trying to do, and the offer's out again to every guy and gal who served in any branch of the services in the conflict. If you can and will, come, and as Frank and all the others have done, we've been doing this now for almost 7 years. Share those experiences. Again, as I said, the bottom line, if you don't tell your story, nobody will. And sad but true, the statistics are, as an example, I've been told that during World War II, there were some 16 million guys and gals throughout the world doing their thing. As of about 2 years ago, there are a little less than 4,000 left. And the big number, they're taking us collectively, something like 12 to 1,500 a week. We're kind of an endangered species. I'm not hanging crepe, but what these guys and gals have done is part of a mosaic. And they're trying to get a good history. It's a big puzzle. Each one of us is a part of that puzzle. If we don't fill in that story, we won't know the whole picture. It's not to be heroes, but just to record exactly and exactly what you did, where you did, and the impact it has on your life. Again, name is Bob Stevens. You can reach me at the end of the show. You have a little place you can write or call. Come and see us. We'll do all we can to make your job and your experience well recorded. Thank you. Keep well.